For as long as humans have been around, they've gazed at the sky and asked the same questions we ask ourselves today. What's out there? Who's out there? Where do we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? Today, of course, science has sophisticated tools to help us probe the heavens. I'm here in the Quinlan Mountains, some 7,000 feet above the Arizona desert, southwest of Tucson, where the Kitt Peak National Observatory has the largest and the most diverse collection of astronomical instruments in the world. They have over 20 optical and infrared telescopes. They have solar telescopes to explore the sun. And they have 2 radio telescopes like this one, whose job it is to analyze the radio waves that come from celestial objects. The scientists here are trying to answer the riddles that have perplexed humankind from the beginning. Where did the universe come from? How is it that the stars and the galaxies and the planets managed to form? How does the universe function? Why is it able to sustain life? And what's going to happen to it in the end? Well, I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of guy who is always full of questions like that. I remember ever since I was a little kid, I was full of curiosity about things. Once my parents gave me a train for Christmas when I was little. And a few hours later, my dad found me in the garage, and I was taking the locomotive and I was throwing it against the cement floor trying to crack it open. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to figure out how it works." I remember after asking so many why questions and so many how questions, my parents went out and they actually bought me an entire set of encyclopedias. And they said, "Look, all of the answers are in there. Go find them yourself." And so I guess it's natural that I would pursue a career as a journalist, because that's what journalists do. They ask the why questions and they ask the how questions. And my guess is this, that you're participating in this curriculum because you'd like some answers too. Maybe you've got questions about what science can and can't tell you about the ultimate issues of life. Well, over these 6 sessions, we're going to go on a journey together. It's a journey that began when I was a teenager and believed that the evidence of science disproved the existence of God. That's when I first began to consider myself an atheist. I'm going to just lay out the evidence as I uncovered it and discovered it. And I'm going to leave it to you to draw your own conclusions about where you think the evidence most persuasively points. Does it point in the direction of a creator or away from a creator? Are you ready to get started? Well, then let's begin.
Lee Strobel earned a Master of Studies in Law degree from Yale Law School and is the former legal editor of the Chicago Tribune. He is the best-selling author of several books that explore the evidence for the Christian faith.
I guess given my curiosity, it's not surprising that when I was in high school, science was my favorite topic, because there the teachers actually encouraged me to cut open frogs and find out how things work, which I thought was great. When I was a teenager, I had this deep trust in science, and I think part of it was prompted by the fact that I grew up in post-Sputnik America, where Eisenhower encouraged all young people to delve into science so we could catch up with the Russians. So to me, science sort of represented the empirical, the hard facts, the things that could be proven experimentally, and that was sort of the way in which I looked at life. I thought people who had faith, people who believed in supernatural things like God, I saw that as a sign of weakness because, do you have any data to back that up?
In the autumn of 1966, Strobel's interest in science led to a life-changing decision.
I can take you back to the exact spot where I was sitting. It was in the 3rd floor overlooking the asphalt parking lot. I was in the 2nd row, the 3rd chair from the front. when my biology teacher recounted in great detail this experiment that had been conducted in the early 1950s at the University of Chicago.
This experiment that impressed Strobel so deeply was one of the most famous in the history of science. In 1953, Stanley Miller, a graduate chemistry student, tried to demonstrate how life first emerged on Earth. Miller attempted to reproduce the Earth's early atmosphere. He pumped hydrogen, methane, ammonia, and a small amount of water vapor into a maze of glassware. Then sparked the gases with electrical discharges to simulate lightning. After 5 days, he discovered what he had hoped for: a few simple amino acids, the basic building blocks of living organisms, had collected in the dark residue at the bottom of the glass. Many hailed Miller's experiment as proof that essential components of life could have formed in the oceans of the Earth billions of years ago.
The philosophical implications of Miller's experiment were instantly obvious to me. And for me, it was a eureka moment, because I heard this and I thought, wait a minute. If you can show scientifically that life can emerge without any outside assistance, if life can emerge just from naturalistic circumstances, then God was out of a job. From there, the acceptance of Darwinian evolution, and full-blown atheism for that matter, was pretty easy. Because if living organisms could emerge by themselves out of this primordial soup without the assistance of any kind of a god or supernatural intervention, then they certainly could develop naturally over the eons into more and more complex creatures, just as Charles Darwin theorized in his book On the Origin of Species.
As Strobel embraced Darwinism and its atheistic implications, he was surprised to discover that many Christians believed their faith was compatible with Darwinian evolution.
There's no way you can harmonize neo-Darwinism with Christianity. I could never understand Christians who would say, well, you know, I believe in God, and yet I believe in evolution as well. You see, Darwin's ideas about the development of life led to his theory that modern science now generally defines as an undirected process, completely devoid of any purpose or plan. Now, how could God direct an undirected process? How could God have purpose and a plan behind a system that has no plan and no purpose? It just does not make sense. Didn't make sense to me in 1966, and it doesn't make sense to me now. In my books, The Case for Christ and The Case for Faith, I talked about the evidence that convinced me of the deity of Jesus and the answers to the tough questions that were stumbling blocks in my spiritual journey. But another critically important aspect of my 2-year investigation of Christianity was the role that science played in propelling me toward atheism. This wasn't just an abstract issue for me. It's a very personal story in which I was pursuing answers to satisfy my heart, my mind, and my soul. Back in the 1960s, in high school classrooms all over America, Miller's experiment was sowing the seeds of atheism into the minds of students like me. It wasn't until the 1980s, when I began to investigate these issues again, that the evidence started to push me toward a far different conclusion. After all, science has come a long way since Miller's experiment way back in 1953. Today we have more discoveries, more data to illuminate these ultimate issues of life. So the question is this: does this deeper and richer pool of contemporary scientific research tend to contradict or confirm the existence of a creator? Or let me put it more personally. Where is the arrow of contemporary science pointing for you? Toward or away from God?